Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Football Today. I am joined, as always, by David Goss. David, are you excited to talk about the retirement of Carly Lloyd, your favorite ever women's football player?
Potentially. I don't know. She's more Philly than New York. So she's on that New Jersey line that goes south. And I don't rep that area as much as a Crystal Dunn, who's from Long Island, who is my favorite.
Oh, love it. Well, if you don't want to hear 45 minutes about Carly Lloyd, that's okay, because we're not going to talk about her. As you know, that's just my running gag, to start every episode. So today, actually, what we are going to talk about is 6 observations that we have had on the summer transfer window, which obviously isn't finished yet. Dave's come up with 3. I've come up with 3. I mean, I've technically got a bit more than 3 as always, but we're roughly going to trade off and on our, and these are like our favorite transfers or interesting transfers, or also just kind of observations or trends we're noticing in the market. So without further ado, Dave, start us off.
Yeah, so mine are all kind of like a transfer that I think shows a bit of a trend. And obviously we're talking transfers, so Messi's going to come up. It's the biggest thing that's happened over the last, 15 years in the world of football. But I decided to focus this one around David Alaba, who I think is the best non-attacking player in the world right now. And he joined Real Madrid. And he joined Real Madrid on a free contract. And one of the things that we've seen, and we've brought this up a couple of times on the show, using other sports kind of as a comparison for football, is in the NBA, players have limited the length of their contract so that they have control over where they go. And they take that control away from teams who can trade them and move them. Obviously, in the world of football, as a player under contract, you still have a ton of flexibility to push a transfer. But one of the trends that I've seen is players willing to run their contracts down so that they get to choose where they go and how their move comes about. And so Alaba and Messi are the 2 biggest examples of that. Donnarumma goes in that category as well over this transfer window. Overall, the full money spent on transfers has gone down. Part of that is because of COVID in this window, but also I think part of that is now this new trend, which is it's going to be higher salaries with maybe less transfer fees. So I think that's an interesting trend to me. I also think David Alaba is the best left back in the world, is a borderline top center back in the world, and defensive midfielder. And for Real Madrid, he can either cover the losses of Ramos and Varane if that's what they need, or he can be the best left back in the world for them, as he was in week 1 in the season in La Liga, or if necessary, if one of the old guard, quote unquote, in central midfield breaks down, he could step in there as well. So for Real Madrid, who they're probably in a weird holding pattern right now, pre-Mbappe is what they look like. He to me is the perfect signing to help them bridge what I think will be the Vinicius, Milito, Valverde future with the Benzema, Cruz, Modric past.
It's Militao. No,
yeah.
I'm really happy, and I'm not surprised at all that you made David Alaba your first choice, and that is because I do agree with you. It's a huge move for Real Madrid. You could argue on the field he's an upgrade on Sergio Ramos at this point in Ramos's career. To say nothing of he seemingly is not going to get injured as much as Sergio Ramos, who's already out for PSG. And I think he'll probably take less money than Ramos wanted. So you probably save a little bit of money there. It's actually great you point him out in the terms of Messi and, players running down their contract, because Mbappe might be doing that right now to get to Real Madrid. And then you have another prominent French player in Paul Pogba, who hasn't signed, who almost assuredly is going to run down his contract, and maybe he re-signs with Manchester United. But, if he is, he's going to get a lot more money, probably as a free agent than he would, re-signing right now. So it's a great point. It's a great trend. And I do think Alaba is just a perfect signing because, as you said, even if they're all set in the middle with Militao and Nacho, because, that was actually a really good partnership towards the end of last season, then he can play on the left where Mendy hasn't been, in my opinion, like great for them. Marcelo's too old. It's a signing that, in my opinion, can't go wrong.
Yeah, agreed.
I just don't see how it happens. But interestingly, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, Dave, do we have a trend that also in there that guys don't necessarily want to stay at Bayern? Like we saw Thiago leave a couple summers ago. He's leaving now, chose not to stay. I'm not saying it is a trend. It's just something I literally thought of when you were talking about it, because that's the second prominent player to leave Bayern in recent years.
I think they've always been in a position where they sit in the world elite, where they were willing to sell, though, right? Like Bayern has not never, because they've started to spend different numbers over the last 5-6 years, but they've never been a club where it's like there is zero chance a guy is leaving and we will keep them no matter what. I think with Alaba, it's pretty clear that at this stage in his life, he's lived at Bayern his entire life. He wanted something new.
Yeah.
He wanted a new experience. I don't even think it was with Mbappe, right? It's the name and the history and the club for Real Madrid is what it seems like if he does go. I don't even think it was that for Alaba. I just think he was ready for a new challenge, a new experience. The one thing I think is connected to it is the way Jerome Boateng's time ended with Bayern and the uncomfortable nature of it, the way he was kind of pushed out when it felt like he wasn't useful anymore. But then he kind of got stuck because he was a little bit too old for teams to really want him. I think Alaba saw all of that, experienced it through him, and sort of was a little bit preemptive about what he chose to do. But this is a guy who plays classical piano and cooks and like does all these things. I just think he's interested in having a new experience and, widening his world. And so he was ready to go to Real Madrid. Thiago wasn't going to play. I mean, he's not a starter at Bayern, right? So I don't know that the two are super connected, but I will say I think Bayern has always been this, which is not a club that says when we are at our top and we have our top players, they are untouchable and they are staying here. They've always been willing to move pieces and work, and it helps when you can then just farm out the rest of the Bundesliga as your reserve team to bring in the replacement, like Upamecano is right now for Alaba.
Yeah, and I don't think this is a trend. It was just something that crossed my mind. But it is interesting now that they kind of have that, vacuum not vacuum. That's way too strong. But all of a sudden, their center backs, could be Upamecano and Nicolas Sula, two young center backs, which is not something that I think Bayern have had, in a long time because of, as you said, Boateng and maybe less so because of Alaba, but Hummels before that. So it is interesting to me to see kind of like, on the flip side, how Bayern, because I watched the Super Cup yesterday on Tuesday night, and it was something that what the commentator mentioned was that, Upamecano and Sula are going to have to like form this new partnership together, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Now, I will say, if you're not Man City, you have to have some level of planning. And I think making the decision to have potentially a rocky year this year, where I believe Upamecano is a top 5 center back in the world. And if he's not there already, he will be. And so for Bayern, it makes sense to take that quote unquote risk right now for the long-term gain of having him be the centerpiece of your club for the next 8 years. So I think it's very smart what they've chosen to do and the way they've chosen to go about it. And then you've got Sula, who's a guy who's been around the club for a while. So at a minimum, even if he's not a top-level world-class center back, although the guy for his size moves unbelievably. It's absurd how quick he is. I think that's the right move for the health of the club going forward.
I agree. It's we're in unfamiliar ground.
It's un-Bayern-like.
Yeah, it is. It's very un-Bayern-like. Let's talk about something, from my point of view, that's un-Bayern-like. And one of my observation is, we're getting the return of the 100 million pound or 100 million euro transfer. This window, obviously, besides Messi, the other big news is Jack Grealish and Lukaku going to the Premier, either going to the Premier League or staying in the Premier League and going to quote unquote bigger teams. Those are the 6th and 7th biggest transfers of all time. Grealish being 100 million, pounds, and Lukaku being reportedly 98 million pounds. But if you look, and I did, of course, at the top 10 transfers of all time, if you look at that list with obviously Neymar number 1, Mbappe number 2, Coutinho number 3, Felix number 4, Griezmann number 5, and then, beneath them, 8, 9, and 10 being Dembele, Pogba, and Hazard, you can make the case, and it's not that difficult to say, that only one of those other 8 players on that list has been a success at at their club. Now you could say Neymar,
the key,
maybe, yeah.
Way. The key is Griezmann was a success, but the move here is to Barca. Coutinho was a success for Liverpool, but the move here is to Barca. Hazard was a success for Chelsea, but the move here was to Real Madrid.
Exactly.
So that's key in looking at this.
And, I would say the only one there that's really you could say has been a success that I didn't is Neymar. And you could say he's been a success there just by, recruiting Messi, essentially. But the point being is, I think you can say without a doubt that it's been a bad idea to pay more than 100 million euros for a player. That's bad decision making or bad business traditionally. Do you think Lukaku and Grealish are going to kind of break that mold? I do think there's a pretty decent chance that they're decent signings. I do still think that they were not wise moves. Your thoughts?
So my number one thought is I'm probably never going to call Lukaku good business, because you sell a guy for a little number and you buy him back for a huge number. That was probably poorly done on your end, because you could have kept him and developed him. I think he's going to be really good for Chelsea. I think he puts them in a spot where he also increases the ceiling for the guys they've signed around him. Timo Werner doesn't make Kai Havertz better, doesn't make Pulisic better, doesn't make Mason Mount better. And you look at what Lukaku did for Lautaro Martinez, for Hakimi, just the way that the Inter attack was built around him and his ability to create for others when his back's to goal, but then also turn and be top goal scorer in the league. I think he's going to be phenomenal for Chelsea. But again, you're asking if it's good business for two organizations that don't operate as an actual business, right?
That's the thing, right?
Yeah, there's no bottom line.
Does it matter if monetarily it fails for them? No. Right. It doesn't.
And on Grealish, I think most people have made this point already, but it doesn't feel like he raises the ceiling of that team. They have that player. They have 5 of them. It just feels like Pep wanted to work with him and brought him in. But again, it doesn't matter. And this is what's fairly broken about, the landscape of how all of this works, and is unfortunate. But I think Lukaku is going to be phenomenal for the next 2-3 years for Chelsea. And I don't think their fans are going to regret that he came to the club.
Nor do I. I mean, I think on the surface, when you just take out the fact that these are not 2 clubs that operate by normal business standards, they got 2 good players. And that's the name of the game. They got 2 good players that can contribute, tomorrow in a big game. And that's really the crux of it, really. I just wanted to, ask also, in addition to this, is do you see more 100 million pound transfers? I mean, Harry Kane is obviously on the market right now, potentially. Haaland doesn't look like will be sold, but do you see teams going back to, these €100 or 100 million pound deals in the future?
I think that there are those unicorn players that are going to be. I think Haaland's the good example, right? Sancho was close. Haaland will probably be there. And then I think there'll be 2 or 3 young players who are on the verge of that move every year or two. But I think my guess would be, I don't know, that the Philippe Coutinho and Antoine Griezmann Hazard moves are done, right? Of guys 27 plus, where you're paying that number and then having not either, one, the inability to turn any of that money over and moving that player on later on, or not reaping the benefits of enough years to make it worthwhile for you. I think that is done, but Lukaku's 28, so I could be wrong.
And Harry Kane is very similar to Hazard in that he's had some injury issues, and you could all of a sudden see him going 2 or 3 years with big injury problems. So I think that
Kane feels unique to me. Kane feels like a very moment in time for City of they need a 9. He's the guy who's available. They're going to make it happen. But I could be wrong about that as well.
Yeah. If it's all monopoly money, you just do it.
Who cares?
It's that simple, right? What's your next one?
So just to throw in on the back of that one of the most absurd moments of this transfer window or whatever it is to me is Michy Batshuayi having his contract extended by Chelsea. So he got
because he was transferred to Besiktas.
He was loaned to Besiktas. They extended his deal, or they picked up his option, whichever one it is. I don't know how much control or influence he had in it. Another year, and then loaned him to Besiktas, just to show you how ridiculous a monopoly this is for these top clubs. And this talk of cutting rosters and wage bills and salaries and all this stuff, it doesn't matter for these clubs, and they're just going to keep him on contract and loaning him out until someone buys him for something. Remember, they extended Giroud. They ended up getting 1 million euros for him from Milan, which, listen, I'd take €1 million myself, but I don't know how much it ended up mattering for Chelsea. I was going to go with a couple clubs that I thought have in general done really well. And the two that stand out, and one of them might sound a bit weird to people, to me, is Leicester and AC Milan. And I know Milan lost Donnarumma for nothing. I don't know how much you can control that. And at some point, when you've got a kid who grew up in your club, and you have to hope that they're going to resign and not try and sell early. But they did the best they could in bringing in Mike Maignan, who is the best young goalkeeper outside of Donnarumma, maybe in Europe, and obviously won the league for Lille last year. And then they bring in Tonali and Tomori, who they were able to have both of them on loan, and they were able to see how they fit into their group, and now they're able to bring them in permanently. And that's also another one of the trends which we've seen, which is these were not, but there is a large movement of loans with the necessity to buy, not an option to buy, the need to buy, which is a way that teams are trying to get around financial fair play and move the numbers around from one transfer window to another to make sure that they stay eligible. And then for Leicester, they continue to sign great young players for the future in Patson Daka and Boubakary Soumare, especially when Ndidi, I think, is a top 5 defensive midfielder in the world and will probably be moving on at some point. But they've also made themselves a little deeper by still having those guys in their squad, strengthening with these two players, and then bringing in Vestergaard and Ryan Bertrand on a free, which Leicester's Achilles heel the last 2 years has been the lack of depth to compete with the top teams. And what they've fallen apart with is just, you need to play at such a level week in and week out, and sometimes twice a week if you're playing in these other competitions, and you don't have the squad depth of a Chelsea, of a City, of a United. Now I think they're starting to push to a place where they have that depth, but they haven't risked their future and their business model and their club model while still trying to get there.
And on the Leicester point, I could see them making a real deep run in the Europa League. I think that might be their best chance to go get a trophy and then get Champions League as well, kind of in the same process. And I know a lot of big teams like United don't really care about the Europa League, but I can promise you Leicester fans will cherish if they make a deep run there, especially on the back of winning the FA Cup last year. And those moves that you mentioned will definitely help them do that. And, to go back to Milan, I think Giroud's a great pickup, an absolute great pickup. I mean, we saw what happened with AC Milan last year when Zlatan was not playing. And they just couldn't, create enough goals. And then, combine it with so the Tomori pickup. Yeah, I was going to say that they've got him at ridiculously cheap figures considering how talented I think
it was
he is.
25 million euros.
Yeah, which is really good business in my opinion to get a guy like that. So I definitely two of the winners of the window. In my opinion as well, just by doing that. Any more thoughts on those?
No, I just so the other clubs I was thinking about was Villa. Obviously, you sell a player like Grealish, but you got the number you needed, and I think they've done well to use it. And I think back to Coutinho, right? A lot of the Liverpool championship team was built on just purely the number that they had with him, Van Dijk being the biggest. And then the other one was, it's hard to quantify what's happening with Inter Milan. Obviously, it's not totally football related. Their ownership group doesn't have money. They overspent. They won a title. Now they're tearing it all down. They've actually done well to replace pieces. For example, they got Dzeko on a free to replace Lukaku short term. They've got Shangaloo as well on a free. They signed Dumfries for, I think, about 15 million euros to replace Hakimi, who Hakimi's the best right back or right wing back in the world. You're not going to, but that's actually pretty nice business to replace those pieces. And they still have Barella and Brozovic in midfield, which I think was, and Lautaro Martinez, which I think was a lot of the key to their success. And they've kept all their center backs, which Skriniar was rumored to leave 2 years ago and 3 years ago, and they've been able to hang on to them. But the mood at that club doesn't feel like one that's going to contend for a title, and so it's hard to say that it's going to look like a good transfer window.
Yeah, and they lost crucially their head coach, Conte, who's, I mean, the silverware speaks for itself.
He's hoping there's more 100 million transfers out there. He's a guy who will follow a club that will make £100 million transfer.
Yeah, we might have to make a what's next for Antonio Conte episode in the future. But I agree. I mean, I think they adequately replaced, and you have to hope if you're them that Martinez kicks on and Barella, kicks on, because he's, I think, only like 23 as well. Yep. And they just have a lot of youth at that team. So you have to just hope they get a bit better. But they got 150 million. They are the leaders, if you're wondering, on who's had the highest net spend for them. They've added 150 million pounds. So yeah, we'll see what happens with them. All right, my turn. Actually, since you're talking about teams, interesting teams, and who had interesting windows, I'm not even saying that I liked their window or I thought they did really well, but just interesting ones. And that is Marseille and Roma. Roma, who obviously just made the Tammy Abraham signing, who I really like Tammy Abraham. If I was a team, I really would have loved to have picked him up. So I think that was good for them. I'm not sure if I love the number, but sometimes you got to make a risk, you got to make a risky play. Just some info on Roma. They have, before the Abraham move, I didn't calculate this after the Abraham move, but they had the sixth highest negative net spend this transfer window at minus 50 million pounds. So if you add another, I think it was 35 million pounds. So that's minus 85. I think it's got to be in the top.
It takes them into the top two.
Okay. Yeah. Top two. Yeah. So they have spent the cash. But when I read you the names, you're going to be like, wait, how is this the second highest net spend? Let me read you the names. One of which who you'll be familiar with at the very least, but I don't know how many more. So you got Brian Reynolds, the American from FC Dallas.
USA.
Roger Ibanez. Rui Patricio, 33-year-old goalkeeper for 10 million pounds. Matthias Vina, out of the Uruguayan league, the Brazilian league. And then, honestly, I can't pronounce it. Eldor Shemurdov, essentially, from Genoa. I'm not saying these guys are bad players. I'm not at all, because I don't really know them besides Patricio and so I'm not saying that this is a bad window by them, but it's pretty remarkable that they've had the second highest or third or highest net spend of the window, and I don't know any of their players other than Tammy Abraham for the most part.
It's also
any thoughts? Yeah.
So the spending is not on Mourinho like the players are. Mourinho loves guaranteed veteran pieces, right? Look at his Tottenham moves. And it was for big physical players who had played in the league and had succeeded in the league. And that's kind of been his history and his MO over the last 10 years. Rui Patricio is really the only person who fits that category. So that's what's interesting to me is you sign Mourinho, you know he has a requirement. He's already expressed what he wants in terms of transfer window. It's interesting that these are the players that they went for. And I think that's where maybe Mourinho has seen now that he's fallen off enough of the pecking order that he can't choose how he operates completely. This is very much the type of signings Roma has always made or has made over the last few years. They're either trying to pick players out from the top clubs who are no longer as important, like, wow, I cannot remember the winger who went from Dortmund to Man U to Arsenal from Armenia.
Oh, Mkhitaryan.
Yeah. So they've made signings like that.
Yeah.
And Pedro as well. Or they've made really young signings and trying to get players before they hit, which is what more of this is like. So I just think it's interesting that Mourinho's been able, or Roma's been able to at least influence Mourinho enough to kind of bring their type of player in. I had Tammy Abraham down as one of my 3 favorite signings of the window. I love him as a player. And you talk about the risk, but he was Chelsea's leading scorer last year.
Yeah.
Like, he's already proven when you give him minutes, he will score. The only thing that you don't know about him is his ceiling. Like, he can only
the
get
money.
better.
The only risk was just the money, but I loved him too. I would have totally paid that fee. And if I was another team in the Premier League, if I was Liverpool, I would have loved Liverpool to get him. But
his fee is less than Bundia was, for example, right? For Aston Villa, which is,
or it's about the same, I think.
Then we're getting into euros and pounds, which you know better than I do. But again, to me, he's already proven. Like, it's not just pure potential with him because he has been the starting center forward in the Premier League and has scored goals when he's gotten time. So I really like that signing as well. But that's what stands out to me about the way this is operated at Roma.
Yeah, and just to remind people, they finished 7th last year and outside of Europe, bad year. And this is Thiago Pinto, their young 37-year-old sporting director who's ex-Benfica. This is his first summer with the team. And I was a little surprised that they didn't get more like Portuguese players other than obviously Patricio, and use kind of his, Portuguese connections, Thiago Pinto, especially when you have Mourinho as well. So I was a little surprised they didn't get more Portuguese talent. But I do want to jump to Marseille, the other interesting team, who I think we can expect bigger things out of them this year. They finished 5th last year. They have, I know, one of your favorite coaches, Sampaoli. They have a negative net spend of £37 million so far this summer. They've signed a lot of young South American athletic talent. This is also the first full summer, I believe, for their young sporting director, Pablo Longoria, who came from Juventus, and they've just made like a bunch of interesting moves. Got William Saliba on loan from Arsenal. Also, Guendouzi from Arsenal on loan. Got young American Conrad de la Fuente. Gerson from Flamengo. Cengiz Under on loan as well. So like just a lot of really interesting talent. And then Ballardi, who they had last year, they made it permanent after a good season with them, by all accounts, from what I've read. So it's just an interesting window. I don't know. I'm not saying it's a good one. It's just interesting. Like,
did you mention Guendouzi as well?
Yeah, I mentioned Guendouzi. Yeah. They're just taking loans from Arsenal. It's fantastic. And Saliba is a good center back in Ligue 1, and I, for the life of me, have no idea why Arsenal seem to have given up on him after signing him for £30 million. But that's its own thing. But I just think they have like a lot of talent, and this is kind of with the money of Frank McCourt, who's a really wealthy billionaire in the States. He owns the Los Angeles Dodgers, and he's got big ambitions. So yeah, I mean, is there anything that kind of stands out about these moves to you, or any? Oh, and they got Milik in the winter. Mm-hmm. So like that's not this window, but really interesting team right now.
I think Marseille's repositioned themselves where they were, I want to say about 5 years ago, which was just off that top group and a really attractive location for players who haven't been able to break through at a bigger club. That's where you look at a De La Fuente, a Bellardi, guys like that, Under, who are having trouble finding their feet. And this is a place where you can go and play in front of an incredible atmosphere for a club where it matters, where you can contend for trophies. You have historically. I think that's where Marseille really is their sweet spot, plus the guys who are frustrated in life's been unhappy, like a Guendouzi, at a bigger club. And one of the things I think we're going to see as financial fair play continues to evolve and change is the clubs that can smartly hunt the clubs that are in trouble. And can you recognize right before when Barca's in trouble and get players off them before everyone else gets involved? And can you do that with a few of these groups where, okay, Arsenal, you know that they have players they don't want. They've got a roster that they need to thin down, and they're still trying to find a way to make their money work to bring new signings in. Now you can go and start to pull players out of that group that fit for you. And I think we've seen Dortmund do it well at times, more with younger players, Leipzig as well, right? Pulling the PSG Academy kids. That's been successful for them. We've seen a lot of Premier League clubs do it poorly, where they've probably taken guys who are over the hill and given too much money. Everton is an example of that. Arsenal's an example of that as well. But I think there's a way to do it right and be really competitive. You need a spine to your team to do that. Like, you need to have the 3 or 4 guys who are consistent that you're pulling those pieces into. And when you look at Marseille, you have Mandanda and you have Payet, who I think are that for you. And then it allows other guys to come in and not have to, you don't have to build a new culture every single time new players come. But Marseille, and I think Roma as well, they have a really interesting potential to sit in that sweet spot. And it requires a lot of moves, but the dream is Sevilla, right? The dream is to operate yourself as well as Sevilla, hit on enough of them that you can build a club. And both of these clubs have a bigger fan base, bigger markets, and bigger history than Sevilla does, where if they can do it as well, they can rise higher.
Yeah, and I think they have more financial power behind them as well. And that's actually kind of one of the interesting things about Marseille is that, like, despite France getting decimated financially because of their TV contracts, actually, like, the top of the league, you could argue, has never been better, or at least in recent years. I mean, obviously, it goes without saying, PSG is as good as they've ever been, if not the best. Monaco, are looking really good. And especially with their, new Red Bull team, essentially, and philosophy, I think they're definitely on the way up. And, we've talked about kind of them on this pod before. Nice has a lot of money from Ineos, and they just hired Christophe Galtier, who is arguably the best coach in the French league, besides, Pochettino. And then, of course, you always have Lyon, who's a solid team, and they just hired Peter Bosch. So, like, at the top of the league, you just have a lot of, I think, talented teams, and it'll be really interesting to see how they do. And honestly, like, I'm just really happy because I want to see what happens with Sampaoli. Like, I'm so here for Sampaoli teams, and if they can and the fact that he's in Europe, it just makes me so happy. And I would love to see them, do well and just play some great games against PSG and Monaco. I'll be watching a little bit, I think, more French league this year. I do. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah. The Lille title race was fun last year. And I agree with you. I think it'll be exciting. Marseille's already been a very Sampaoli team in the first 2 weeks, which is insanity. Yeah. And when you said he's one of my guys, I want it to be clear. I would not hire him to work for me. I would not want him to run a club I root for, but I will watch every game that he manages for whatever team he does. I was surprised you didn't bring up Nice more, because while they've spent, and obviously they've brought in Galtier, and there's an increased level of commitment, they've spent really young, which is interesting. And Todibo, they brought in from Barca. Kluivert, they brought in on loan. They already have a young attack as well. So that's what's really fun about this Nice group is it's a team that feels like can contend and has this level of reinvestment, but they're also doing it in a different way. And there's like the idea similar to Leipzig of like, we will probably flip these players and bring in the next generation at some point. It's not, this is not long term.
And I think they got the best coach on the market. Like, I think of any coach that was probably hired this year, aside from like Allegri at Juventus, he's probably the best one that you could have got. I mean, we talked in the Lille episode about how reliable and stable his teams are. So, and I think they've already started the league with a couple wins. So, definitely be interesting what they do. Dave, your last one.
So my last one was going to be Tammy Abraham, but I'm not going to use that anymore because we already talked about Roma, which I appreciate because I like that you went for it. So I'm going to say one that probably won't work out the way it looks, but I have a funny comparison, and it's Eric Garcia to Barcelona. And one of the things I think back on always, and it blew my mind when it happened, although in looking back, I was a little bit overestimating. When Rijkaard left and Pep took over, the only real move they made was bringing in Piqué, who at the time was a guy who hadn't broken through at Manchester United. In looking back, I was incorrect about that. They also brought in Dani Alves in that window, who went on to be a legend. But the other players they brought in were Hleb and Martin Caceres, who Hleb was a failure and Caceres never really played. But I don't think it's going to happen again. But it is interesting that this is the most worrying time in Barcelona's history since Rijkaard left. And I think Pep Guardiola was special for that team to turn around. And Xavi and Iniesta and Messi existed. And I don't think they exist in the team now. But there is some potential for a future for Barcelona. It's going to come through the young players who are on the roster. And Eric Garcia on a free at 20 years old is one of the best signings you could make. And could he be that next Piqué that helps you build going forward? And then you look at Pedri, and I think Trincao, and obviously Ansu Fati, and all these young guys. And there is no Messi or Iniesta, so it's not going to happen again. But it will be interesting to see how big of a moment that signing could be for Barca going forward.
I love it. I mean, I love the comparison. I love how deep you've thought about this, because that has never even crossed my mind. But it is a great signing. And like, while I'm not as high on Eric Garcia, I do think that Barcelona will win the league this year. I said it on Twitter, and I think everyone has this idea that because they're a shit show in the boardroom, that they're a shit show on the field. And on the pitch last year, they finished the season as well as any team in Europe. They were, they really made Atleti sweat it out. And all right, they didn't get there in the end, but like all the guys that you just mentioned are really good. Like, okay, yes, you're losing the best player in your club's history and the best player in Spain. Okay, but you still have a ton of talent. And like, I think Ronald Koeman's a really good coach. I do. Not a great coach. He's not Pep, but he's a good coach. And, we forget that Fati was injured pretty much all of last year or most of last year. So I think they're going to be a really good team, and I think they're going to win the league. And I mean, I don't buy that Eric Garcia is going to be Piqué, but I think he's a good player. I don't think he's got the height. I think I'm taller than him.
It seems like heading's going to be banned in about 2 years, and it won't matter. And that wasn't even a joke. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever it is.
But that might have been my favorite one that you've mentioned, because I actually totally forgot that he went there. So good call, Dave. Good call.
And you want to finish up on?
Yeah, I want to finish up on. So I got a lot to unload here. But the last one is like just a reminder that the Premier League is already the Super League. And since we're talking about La Liga, I'll kind of start with it here. La Liga, their spending, their expenditure has been half as much as the French league, whose TV contracts have been decimated. And like, that's absurd that their spend is half as much as the French league. It's a third of Serie A. They've spent 132 million pounds this summer. The whole league. That's like Grealish in one, like for the entire league. I mean, the reason is because, Real Madrid and Barcelona haven't been able to spend any money, and usually that trickles down, right? So once they buy a player from, Valencia for 50 million, then Valencia can spend money elsewhere. And obviously the whole league has been hit hard because of COVID, and they're actually trying to be responsible. And then we also have their new rule that you can't spend more than 70% of your income, your revenue. But to branch out, I mean, the Premier League once again dwarfs every other league. They have the expenditure of Ligue 1, Bundesliga, and Serie A combined. That's outrageous. It's just like, we keep talking about the Super League. The Super League already exists. It's the Premier League. And like, we just always need to remember that, because it's not even close. Like, I just want to rattle off a few more things. 8 of the 10 most expensive signings were players going to the Premier League or Premier League teams. And 6 of the top 10 transfer net spend clubs in the world were Premier League teams. So it bears repeating. I got some more thoughts, but what do you think about the La Liga and them spending half as much as the decimated French league?
2 things stick out with La Liga. One was they wasted Messi and Ronaldo and their ability to become that league that can rival the Premier League in terms of financial stability. Like, they had the 2 best players on the planet playing for the 2 biggest clubs on the planet against each other 3 to 5 times a year because of the way La Liga set it up. And they weren't able to capitalize on that properly. I think a lot of that goes down to TV markets and what they were able to do with their rights deals globally and the way that they were able to position it. And then the second is that now they're probably doing the right thing, which is trying to put all their clubs on a level of financial stability so that you don't have clubs falling apart. Because I think we're going to continue to see that in Italy, and I think we're going to continue to see that in France. And so long term, it'll probably work out for them. The only thing is, I've been reading a ton over the last week or two, and I'm sure everyone has, about hard salary caps and soft salary caps and financial fair play and how it all works. And it feels like there's a pretty good chance that what's going to come from all of this is a solidifying of tiers that already exist. The things are going to be based off revenue, and that the big clubs are going to be able to spend more than the small clubs in perpetuity because they already spend more and they already make more. And so right now, as La Liga sort of drops themselves down, there's a chance that they get stuck there for a really long time, if not forever. And so I think they're doing the right thing for the health of the league now, but it may work out. It could work out perfectly, right? They could be the last one standing outside of the Premier League later on. But I think all of that's really interesting when you look at what La Liga is doing this offseason.
Yeah, and just it's funny because you can actually make the argument that we're more likely to get a Super League based on some observations from this summer, and you can also make the case that we're less likely. And I'll point this out by mentioning, so Deloitte, they do like their own money league every year, and if you look at the top 15 clubs in their money league, like all of the clubs that you see that are not English, it's crazy. Non-Premier League teams have a positive net spend this summer, so they've recouped more than they've bought, of 120 million. This is the top 15 clubs in the world when it comes to revenue, as said by Deloitte. The Premier League is minus 370. So there's literally like a 500 million pound difference between Premier League clubs and non-Premier League clubs in the Deloitte Money League. That's outrageous. Like, we're talking about even the rich of the rich. Now, obviously, a lot of that is because of financial mismanagement at Barca and Real Madrid. But even if you take away them, like you have, Juventus at minus 1 million at the moment. Like Dortmund is at obviously, plus 50, and you have like Inter at outrageous. Now, obviously, this is not going to be like this in perpetuity, but like even amongst the top, the Premier League clubs stick out like crazy, which is why you have Juventus, Barca, and Real wanting the Super League. At the same time, if you're the Premier League, you're like, why do I actually want to go to a Super League? I'm already in it. And so and if those clubs can't get the Premier League clubs, is a Super League feasible? So on the one hand, you have every reason for Super League, and on the other hand, in my opinion, you have every reason not to if you're those English clubs. So it's just something that's interesting to me.
They also succeeded because the Champions League is now the Super League.
Yeah. But even amongst those clubs, there's like a real, Premier League, and then PSG has like an insane amount of money, and then every other club really just has to like figure it out, because you might get bought. A Premier League team might buy your player. So that's just really interesting. That's kind of my last like overarching trend thought that I have. And I just had some other thoughts. Do you have any other thoughts before we kind of like wrap up?
No.
All right. So here are some just like things that I was thinking about when I was doing research, and that I noticed. One, the Saudi League is like just spilling the cash. They have the second highest net spend so far. Like, didn't see that one coming. And interestingly, of their top 25 transfers, 11 have been for Brazilians. So like, if the Brazilian league is just tapping that Saudi faucet right now. They're like, give us that cash, Saudi.
My guess from the outside, without looking at it, is one, this is replacing a lot of the Chinese signings that were being made. Like there always has to be this, not always, but there has always been for the last years, this one outside European group that will spend obscene amounts of money on players. It was China for a while. At times it's Major League Soccer. And I think right now it's Saudi Arabia. The other is a lot of times the players they sign are Brazilians and Argentines who have shown a willingness to play outside of the top 5 leagues already. Yeah. So a lot of the guys they end up signing
for good money.
Are the ones who have gone to China, Japan, the US already, or are playing in Ukraine or Russia or something like that, where that's easier for them to get those players than someone out of, Barcelona or Real Madrid, or to try and get Bernardo Silva to come.
I have to look at it, but I think actually those 11 players are actually from, a lot of them are from Brazilian clubs, and they're actually on the younger side. They're not like 29-year-old kind of has-been guys. They're actually on the younger side. I didn't bring this up or put it in the notes, so I have to look that up. So I'm not exactly sure, but they're all also from like between 8 and like 15 million. So they're not like huge signings, but for a Brazilian club, that's good money, for players to get in. So I just thought that was interesting. My favorite transfer one of my favorite transfers is a non-transfer, and that is just West Ham keeping all of their players, which is like so non-West Ham. They're usually like super active and either buying or selling, and like they've essentially just like held flat. And I just like it when you overperform like they did last year and you don't lose anything. Like, often when you overperform, someone gets poached. So like, traditionally maybe Declan Rice would have been poached. But that hasn't happened because, West Ham don't have any need to sell him. And so anyway, I just like that. And, I thought their first game against Newcastle, they looked really good. And I just think they're going to be really good again this year. So sometimes the best action is inaction.
I think that's fair. Although it puts a lot of pressure on David Moyes. Just throwing it out there.
It does. I also like the Memphis. You mentioned Barca before. I like the Memphis pickup. Like, I just think he's a good player, and he's a guy that loves the limelight. And I just think he's going to bask in like being arguably the biggest player on Barcelona.
You think he's going to bask or he's going to catch on?
Oh, butt up Ching.
Nailed it.
Well played. I had as my most interesting Jadon Sancho. How do you feel about it? Because actually, on the one hand, I think like that could actually be like really good business. Like for the money they paid for him, last year when it was 120 million, I was like, that's really expensive. But for 70 million pounds, like for one of the best young players, if not the best young player in the world, I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I had him on my list as well, and I think to your point, like I think he'll be the value. Yeah. Right, he's young. I think he's good enough to be one of the top 3 players on a Premier League side that can win a title. I think he'll probably stay for the length of the contract or whatever it is. Like I think he'll be solid. 85 million pounds is a lot, but he's worth it. So it was kind of one of those where normally when you end up on these great deals, you find someone who was undervalued or whatever. Although I did find in this window, and maybe this goes to players playing their contracts down and going on freeze, there were not a ton of, wow, I can't believe that signing transfers that were made. And part of that maybe is the Premier League's overpaying on some of these pieces. But I think in general, it felt like, and then there's also the how many players that went on loan already that were, required to be bought, which was a lot of the business that clubs did as well. It didn't feel like there was a lot of moves where you couldn't believe that one club got this player for that amount.
Yeah, and pretty insane that he was on Manchester City as recently as I think 3 years ago, and that now he's at their rivals. So Manchester City couldn't get it done, keeping arguably their best young talent, who maybe is better than Foden, but not that it matters for them because as we talked about earlier, they don't have to play by normal rules and business practice. So that's really interesting. The last one. So we're going to play a quiz in a moment, but my last one is Ben White. And I think that's my most questionable transfer of the whole window. I like him. I just like, he was more money was paid for him than Upamecano, than Konate. And like, I just don't see it. Like, he's a nice player. I think he's a nice player. I don't think he's anything more than that. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts? This is your account.
I'm gonna buy when Arsenal win a league and he's the reason why, when he's Van Dijk 2.0, I'm gonna buy you a Ben White jersey. Kit. Sorry, apologies.
I'll gladly wear it and eat my words. But seriously, like I just don't see it.
Yeah. It's the English markup, right? He was 10 million pounds more than Konate and Upamecano, which that's that English markup, which is unnecessary. Although, by the way, Upamecano is a much better player than Konate, so Bayern got the better of those two deals. But I don't disagree. What?
I said for now.
Yeah, but I don't disagree with you. I think it shows the value that people have put now in the center back position, where you weren't spending these numbers probably on that spot a few years ago, and now with the success, I think specifically of Liverpool with Van Dijk, and then the numbers that Pep's put at that position, which pushes the market up, I think clubs see the necessity in having that lockdown center back that can help you in space behind, but also organize in front and play out of the back. But I agree with you that I don't think Ben White is that guy. And so the signing makes not a ton of sense for us.
Like, I would feel much better if I knew if he was with like an elite guy next to him. But I mean, we'll see what happens. I don't love it. I don't love it. Okay. To finish off, I just wanted to do a little quiz with you. So the last 4 windows since 2018, the summer of 2018, I want you to guess the top 5 highest net spends in world football. Okay.
So all combined or one window?
No, all combined. The last 4 windows combined since the summer of 2018.
Net spend.
Not overall spend.
PSG?
Nope.
Manchester City?
They are number 3.
Okay. City are 3. Bayern?
At negative 268 million.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Bayern?
Nope.
Juventus?
Nope.
If I guess every club, does it count as winning?
It might take a while. On one of them, I know it'll take a while, but
Barca?
Nope.
Really? On net spend?
On net spend. Remember, they got killed with the wages, not the.
But who have they sold? I mean, if they bring in Dembele and Griezmann at the numbers they brought them in. I guess Coutinho's outside of this window.
Yeah.
But I don't believe they've sold anyone.
Neymar, but I don't think
he's in this window.
I don't think he's in this window. So yeah,
I don't believe this list. I think this list.
Telling you, well, I got it from Transfer Market, so complain to them.
Oh, so it's not reliable.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. Net spend.
All right, so you got Manchester City. Come on, you can do this. You can at least get 3, Dave. You can at least get 3. There's no reason. Yeah, Chelsea's at number 4.
Everton?
So Chelsea's at number 4 with minus negative 253 million pounds. Everton, nope.
I'm trying to think.
Although I do think PSG was number 6, just for the record, if I'm racking my memory.
Got it. I don't think Inter can be in this category because of how much they've made this window. And I don't see, clubs that have net spend. I don't know that there are that many clubs that have spent 250 million euros, let alone net spend.
Well, the number 1 had spent in the 473 million pounds. So, yeah.
Is it Real Madrid?
No.
Who is it?
Manchester United is number 1.
I think I said them, by the way. But
no, I don't. Well, my apologies. I don't think you did.
That's fine.
That they're at negative 355 million at number 1. As I said, City's at number 3. Chelsea's at number 4. Your club, Dave, Arsenal, coming in at number 2. Numero dos. Nice. At negative 269 million, just one above Manchester City, and the reason is because they like can't sell anyone.
Yeah,
they've sold 99 million pounds worth of players in the 4 years. And number 5, you were never going to get number 5.
Give me a clue. What league?
Okay, it's in the Premier League.
Oh, they're all Premier League clubs. All 5.
All 5. Yeah. That's Premier League is the Super League, Dave. Okay, I'll try to give you a hint. Let's see if I can't give you 1 or 2 hints. Finish off. Okay, so this club is known for what? They made a. I think they made. They're known for in the past, in the 2000s, they had a bunch of tall ass strikers.
It's not helpful.
Yeah, that's not really helpful. Okay. I'm trying to do
Portsmouth.
Okay. Well, think of Premier League team.
I was joking.
Okay.
It was a joke. Just tell me. Okay. I think you giving me a clue is going to be harder than me guessing.
Yeah, because it's like without giving it away. It's Aston Villa.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Even after Grealish, because they've spent it all again?
Negative 212 million pounds. In this window, actually, I believe they're up 20 million in the window or something like that. But yeah, they've just been, like rinsing money. And I don't even know who their owner is, to be honest. But yeah, whoever it is just printing out money. That's my quiz. I hope the people at home did a better job than you did.
I hope they did as well.
Absolutely brilliant. Any final thoughts, Dave?
Now, I did a little bit of quick research while we were on. I don't think your thing about the Saudi Arabian League is correct. I don't think they're coming from Brazil. It's like Paulinho and like Funes Mori. Like those are the guys.
Honestly, signing. I didn't like look at their backstory.
Josh, I did it for you. I did the work.
Yeah,
I got you. But yeah, all of this is still fake. And until someone decides at some point to make any of this have to be real, then clubs like Barcelona and Real Madrid, but even more so, smaller clubs are just going to get spent out of existence. And it sucks. But if you root for a club that got one of these players, enjoy and have fun this season.
Yeah, man. Arsenal's coming for that number 1 spot, people. They made that Odegaard signing today. Coming for that number 1.
They sold Joe Willock, man.
Yeah,
that's business.
Hey, man, they can be number 1 in something, all right. Well, as always, thanks for listening to us. Subscribe if you haven't, and we'll be back in a couple weeks. Take care. music for this episode was provided by Blue Dot Sessions, and you can find more information about the music in the episode show notes.